Hi, and welcome to the Bold Leadership Stories Show, where we get to talk to leaders and entrepreneurs, and we uh, talk about experiences shaping exceptional lives. And today, I've got the honor of speaking with Bob Donnell. And Bob is he's been in the Temecula area off and on, and he's been up in Idaho area, and now he's in the Central Coast, California, tearing it up there. And let me introduce Bob. Bob's Bob's regarded as an authority in the area of human behavior. And as a student of human behavior since 1979 and an interventionist, he's been instrumental in helping thousands, working with teams and individuals get even better results, both personally and professionally, by helping them align their behaviors with their desired results. His personal story, wow, there's so much here, Bob. You've been through the ringer. I'll hit some highlights here. And when you were 15, you were hit by a drunk driver and set you into a coma for 3 days and had a 7-week recovery in a wheelchair. And then your only parent, and when you were in high school, passed away. Then you had a father figure that died of an overdose. Wow. Your 3-year-old daughter, Macy, died in a car accident, which you witnessed. Wow, so devastating. Your oldest brother, 10 years older, died from suicide, and you had a grandchild die of SIDS, 2 months old. Wow, a tremendous amount of strife and challenge there that obviously you've overcome to some degree. You founded a nonprofit at age 19. It's funny, people either, with all of that strife, they either fold or they grow. And you made the decision to just go fight back and do what you can do to make things better. And it's tremendous. So you founded a nonprofit at age 19 for suicide prevention and crisis intervention. And you attracted a board of directors that included a psychologist, and this is at 19, psychologist, a psychiatrist, MFCC, Master Sergeant of Narcotics for LAPD, public school principal and attorney, as well as a few parents. Admirable. Love to chat with you about that. You were a regional manager. Then you went into some sales at 25. You were working in regional management and sales, making appointments for other businesses, looks like. And then you founded some companies. You've done consulting. You've done work with multi-million-dollar companies, leadership in sales and marketing, and just done an admirable job. You've then moved into real estate, looks like, and then founded Everything Next Level, which is your present passion, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let me show, if it's okay, I'm going to share a screen here real quick.
Okay.
Let's see, Everything Next Level. That's your website.
There it is.
So tell us a little bit about that. It's whatever becomes accessible becomes, or whatever becomes acceptable becomes inevitable.
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
That's one of the pillars that I wrote. I've written over 150 different pillars over the years, and they're just pillars that I've learned to adapt to my life. And they either came out because of an event that happened, or they came out because of something I saw or heard about, and then just said, "How about if I create a pillar?" And so I'll create the pillar. So Everything Next Level is exactly what it is. It's everything next level. And so one of the pillars that I wrote is every next level demands a different you. It doesn't request it, it demands it. So what does that mean? Every next level of your life, your health, your finances, your relationship, your business, you name it, every next level is going to demand a different you. And so when I created the company, I said, well, that means everything next level. So you tell me what you want to do, and we'll create a pattern and a behavior that aligns with that desired outcome. And that's the only way you're going to really get the outcome. You're not going to get it because you think about it. You're not going to get it because you're excited about it. You're going to get it because you align your behavior with that desired result.
To be congruent in that behavior. I found I've had some success in my life in sales and marketing as well. And I found when I was able to be congruent with that, not only for myself, but for my team, that everything worked really well. And the client, everything has to be congruent. So and sometimes we get off course and need to bring people in like yourself to give us that, kind of visibility and objective view, right?
Yeah, I've never met an individual who wants to accomplish anything that doesn't have people on the sidelines um, giving him some ideas.
It's so important somehow, it's every professional athlete has at least one coach.
At least one.
Yeah, I remember a story I heard about Michael Jordan, and I believe if I remember the story correctly, he at one point had 9 different coaches.
Yeah.
One for his free throws, and one coach for conditioning, and one coach for stretching, and one coach for mindset.
Right.
All these different facets of his work.
Yeah, and that's Michael Jordan. That's the greatest, right?
Right.
So
Yeah.
and you can look at any sport, you can look at any business, anything, and the leaders always have people speaking into their lives.
So what brings you into that world? Your life obviously started with some challenges that you worked to overcome, and you've done an admirable job of giving back, I think, and helping people. What is it that drives you? What is it that motivates you every day?
I think there's a great verse in the Bible where it talks about that God has seen the eyes of the oppressed. And I think that really struck me even when I was a kid, because I just realized that, there's people all around us that are suffering, and we can be a catalyst for helping those people, even if we're only one step ahead of them. You don't have to be a billionaire to help somebody who's struggling with their their identity or their personal development or something. So
Right.
we can help people. So I just realized that there was a lot of things in my life that I just really want to be a catalyst. And it all came back to July 19th, 1979. I was 15 years old. I went to a church youth camp, and I remember thinking, I have a calling on my life. And I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's to become a pastor. I don't know if that's to become a youth minister. I didn't know, but I knew that
15, huh?
at 15, yeah.
15. That's amazing.
Yeah. And I just knew that I had a calling on my life to do something. And that was probably to use my ability to speak to others and help. So
Okay.
I went to a cabin leader at the youth camp. This was in Oklahoma. Went to the cabin leader and I said, hey, can I speak to your cabin of 12 or 10 or 12 people or what? And he goes, what are you going to speak on? I said, I have no idea, but I decided July 19, 1979 is the night I'm committed to doing something and using my life for that. And he said,
Okay.
yeah, come on in. So I spoke. That was the first time. And ever since then, I've been very, very blessed to share stages with, amazing people in throughout the course of life. And that kind of got me on the path. Well, then I started my nonprofit organization. The best thing about that was at age 15 and a half, my mom was diagnosed with cancer and told she was going to live 6 months. She was the only parent I really knew or ever had. So I was basically going to be an orphan in 6 months is what they were saying.
Right.
Short story is, during that time, she ended up living 2 years. So she died when I was 17. And but during that time, a gentleman who knew my mom, knew our situation. I can't tell you his name. Couldn't pick him out of the lineup. But I remember him walking up to me one day and saying, hey, Bob, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I don't know. I'm 15. But why are you asking me at 15?
Yeah, what are you asking me that for?
Yeah, I was
I'm
like,
just a
what?
kid.
But what I realized later was that he knew that I was, possibly going to be an orphan in 6 months. And so I better have a game plan. I said, why are you asking me? He says, because you can learn a product or service or an industry, or you can learn one thing that drives every product, every service in every industry. And I said, well, what's that? And he goes, human behavior. If you understand why somebody will or won't, you can be helpful in anything. And I said, sign me up. Facetiously. And he
Uh-huh.
said, great, I want you to go back to school after the summer. I want you to become a peer counselor. And I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. And so I did.
Okay.
Again, that was just having a mentor speak into my life, me take action and do it. Became a peer counselor, a couple of years later, graduated high school and everything. And a couple of years later, a gentleman whose son that I was working with, um, amazing human being, and he was an attorney, and he said, hey, I need you to come by the office. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm 19. Why am I getting summoned to an attorney's office? And I was nervous. I was like, what did I say? What did I do? What?
Right.
Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he says, sit down. And he goes, you've been doing a great job with our son. And I think it's just time that you play a bigger game. Now, make no mistake, I didn't know what a bigger game looked like at that point. I just thought, okay, what does that mean?
You're just going with the flow.
Yeah. And he says, you need to become a 501c3 nonprofit. You need to develop a board of directors. You need to start traveling and speaking and speaking to get people to donate money and raise funds. I'm like, whoa, 19. So I did. And we put together a board of directors and ran that and did that and did it very informally for the first little bit, then became the 501c3 and then turned it over to basically community people as time went on. But it was an amazing experience.
So what was some of the fruit that was created from that for you and for the community?
Some of the lifelong principles that I learned were having great mentors speak into you,
Mm.
having the ability to look beyond you. Borrowed credibility was a huge one for me. When I told the attorney, I don't know who's going to sign up for my board of directors, he goes, well, if you have an attorney on, professionals will feel comfortable about lending their name. So you can use my name, my office, my attorney, my being an attorney. So that borrowed credibility was huge. I was able to really, go into schools because of that credibility. At 19, be summoned into high schools, public schools, to go in and, talk to the kids that were having problems or struggling with things.
Hmm.
So that was huge. And I think one of the other things that I really garnered in that time was the board of directors that I had became my education. I had psychologists, I had psychologists, a psychiatrist, I had a marriage family therapist, sergeant of narcotics for LA County PD, and an attorney. I had amazing people that not only lend their name and credibility to me, but allowed me to, I remember one of the psychiatrists I went to, we were having lunch one day and I said, he was my board of directors. And I said, man, I don't know how you deal with this stuff every day with all these things that get thrown at you by people that are just dumping their stuff on you. And he
Hmm.
goes, well, Bob, let me let you in a secret. I said, what's that? And he says, every good psychiatrist has a great psychiatrist.
Okay.
And I'll be your psychiatrist. So every week we'll meet for lunch and you can just bleh. And so that was a great lesson that even the best of the best of the best have somebody that allows them to vent and allows them to get perspective.
Okay. Good lesson. So you mentioned that you founded or you were working with first responders.
Yeah.
So tell me about that.
That's just something that kind of just became when I was a little kid, I always thought, oh, being a cop would be cool,
Yeah.
being a fireman or whatever. But I never took that path, never even pursued that path, never even thought about it really beyond much as a kid. Um, but then um, I've always been respectful towards law enforcement, always shown them appreciation, always respected them, even in public, even 12 years, 15 years ago. But in the last, several years, it's gotten pretty brutal for a lot of them. And
Yeah.
I started going out to a lot of crisis situations in the midst of crisis, like the Vegas shooting, like the Saugus shooting,
Oh,
El
wow.
Paso shooting. Recently, I went to Uvalde, Texas for the school shooting there. And I'll go and I'll just spend a few days there on my own and just be there in support of the community and just kind of hold a space for them. And typically go to the memorial site and be a place to just be with them and
Mhm.
speak into the lives of the community and maybe some of the parents and things. And so that just kind of took a thing of its own. And then obviously because of that, I was always talking to the first responders and encouraging them and supporting them and, loving on them the best that I could.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's been, that's become one of those things where I just love supporting them and all first responders. It's not just law enforcement, but all first responders. They're on that front line for a reason,
Mhm.
and so it's just been my honor to be able to support them in any way that I possibly can.
Well, that's awesome to hear. It's like you're putting yourself out there in a way that is so giving.
Hmm.
And at times when people are at their wits' end, and they've been through so much devastation, and having you, like, after a shooting, to go there and just listen and connect maybe other people and resources to help them recover and kind of make sense of it all,
Yeah,
right?
it's an amazing opportunity that I'm afforded because of my because of my business and because of my background. It's an opportunity that I wish I never had.
Yeah. It's so important. I mean, it's like, and nobody recognizes you for that. You won't get written up in the newspaper or anything for that, would you? Do you?
No, probably not because I don't really talk about. I mean, I tell people, "Hey, I'm going," and
Right.
sometimes people. The number one question, Jim, that I get is people will be like, "Man, I wish I could do it." I'm like, "You can come with me.
Right.
You're welcome to come with me." I mean, I realize that not everyone can just drop everything and go on a moment's notice, but the opportunities are there to support people who can maybe. Um,
Mhm.
and when I get there, it's just Uvalde was the hardest one for me. I drove 2.5 days to get there, 2.5 days to get back. It was 105-degree heat. It was blazing hot, and you had the most critical thing. You had the police were under fire. The school was devastated. The
Mhm.
community was reeling, and you lost 19 kids
Yeah.
plus two teachers. That was the hardest one for me. I mean, Vegas was tough, but Uvalde was the toughest one for me.
Mm. Wow. Well, thank you for doing that. That's
Thank you.
supporting the first responders.
Mm,
It's
thank you.
amazing. That's really good work. Um, and then move on in your experiences here. You've done speaking internationally for the different groups, U.S. military,
Mhm.
um, looks like businesses. Tell us a little bit about that. How did you get started doing that, and where do you see your leadership skills adding to that mix?
It's interesting because it's easier to identify them in segments like the military,
Mm,
um, the the CEOs of corporations, things like that. But really, they're all the same. It's all based on what that at 15, what I was told. If you understand why somebody will or won't, you understand human behavior, you can speak into any group, organization, product, anything you want, you can help. And so it never really, for me, it's never a separate thing. It's always human behavior, and then you tell me what segment we're going to go talk to, and we'll create. So, I've always wanted to speak to military internationally. And I had the opportunity to speak here in the US a couple of times. And then one day I was given an opportunity to travel over to Germany and speak to Germany, to our military there, and Italy,
mm,
as well as in London, and do some things over there. Um, those things are just, it's all based on human behavior. Um, I was sitting there having dinner with a colonel one night in Italy, and we're having dinner, and there's about 10 of us having dinner, and I said, "Sir, can I ask you a question?" And he said, "Sure." And I said, "What is? How do you keep your ego in check?"
mm. Great question.
And he says, "Well,
Because they have, like, they're in a position to basically command what they
yeah,
need, want, and if you complain, you go to jail.
Yeah, he said, why do you ask me that? I said, because you can walk on base and say, do this, and they say, yes, sir, without even questioning you.
Yes.
But when you walk off base, you don't have that same authority, and anyone else looks at you and goes, who are you to tell me what? And
Right.
and he goes, well, I married a good wife.
Okay.
She doesn't let me buy the press, doesn't let me buy my position. And wow, that was really cool. So I said, can I ask you one more question? He said, sure. I said, this question is, what's the highlight of your day? I mean, is it when you walk on base and you're saluted? Is it when you're sitting in a situation room and they're telling you what's happening in your life or around the world and how you're going to play a part in it? What's the highlight? And he goes, my highlight of my day is every day is the same highlight. I said, what is that? And he says, it's when I tuck my kids into bed.
Oh,
And I remember just like thinking, it wasn't what I was expecting. It
yeah. It
wasn't
sounds
what I
like
was,
that was a bit of a pattern interrupt. It's like, what?
yeah. And I was like, wow. But the coolest thing is we were walking across the base the next day, and I said, sir, I said, I would follow you into any battle. And he said, why? And I said, because of your answers last night.
Mm.
And his name is Colonel Marks, an amazing guy, and just greatly appreciated his leadership. But the more I've seen, the more that I've spoken in military bases, the more I'm proud of the leaders we have. I mean, I walk away from those every time going, we're in good hands with these amazing human beings that are leading us. So, you know, whether it's that or whether it's corporations, major corporations or and these CEOs, I love the CEOs that are just they just want to be better. I mean, when I'm sitting down with a leader, and whether it's military or not, and the thing they say is, what can I do to be better?
Mm-hmm.
I'm in, man. They've got my full support. I am just honored that to be in the presence of people who are constantly wanting to be better. Again, everything next level. What's the next level for you in that particular area of your life?
What was the inspiration for that name?
Um, well, I'll tell you, one of the biggest inspirations is because the term next level has been used over and over and over again,
Yeah.
day in and day out. You'll hear it, you'll watch it online, you'll see it in television shows. Next level. So next level in 2000 and probably 2004, I said, I'm going to incorporate that into my business name. So I did that. And that was probably the biggest thing. But the other reason is because I know that for me, it's really about getting to your next level. And again, it's not about that you're moving up or you're making more money it's about what's your next level. Your next level may be just lose 5 pounds. Your
Mm.
next level may be to just enhance a relationship that you've had in your life over the years that just has grown stagnant and elevating that.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the next level is. So then I started thinking, well, then that means everything has a next level. Well, then how about everything next level?
Yeah, we tend to think when we're thinking about, and if we're involved with a business of some kind, and we're in a leadership role, we're thinking about next level being in that business.
Yeah.
But that's not what life's about.
No.
Yeah, you've got
And
so much
that.
more
Yeah.
to make, and everything that you do adds to the other things.
Yeah.
Some or affects it one way or another. So I think from my 65 years now on this planet, and the things that I've done right and wrong,
Right.
that's a key element. And sometimes I've forgotten it. Sometimes I've gotten off onto, it's like I'm business and I'm just doing the business thing, and other areas suffer. So
Yeah.
it's
Brutal.
always looking at, like we talked about earlier, having somebody, tap you on the shoulder and say, are you really taking care of this area as well as you could be?
Yeah.
And what can we do to help you make that, smooth those things out that are, there's storms brewing. Maybe you need to address that.
Absolutely.
So it's good to have people like you around to be able to kind of get that perspective. And along those lines, you've written at least one book. How many books have you written?
I've written 3, published 2 so far.
Okay. So I'm going to pull up one of them here.
Okay.
Mastering Your Inner Game.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like this is on Amazon. It can be
It's on Amazon. Yeah.
purchased on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us a little bit about that.
Mastering Your Game came out after I lost a daughter in a car accident that I witnessed. I decided that I needed to put together some things that would help me navigate the waters that were ahead of me.
Mhm.
And so I created these 7 pillars and started looking at how can these 7 pillars start helping me. And it was a compilation of information I had taken from, learned from other people, mentors that had taught me over the years. And I created these 7 pillars. The inner game is what I call, it's different than mindset. It's the mindset is the way you might think about something. Your inner game is the personal intestinal fortitude, everything that makes you up who you are today. So Jim, everything that you thought in the past, everything you think about your future, everything that you've been through in your past, everything that you're going through today, everything that you're thinking that you might go through in the future, all of those things create this inner game. And this inner game has to be strong enough to support the actions required for the result you desire. So you say, I want to make more money. Okay, then I need to make more sales. Okay, so how am I going to make more sales? Well, you can come up with the best plan of how to make more sales. You can take the best training and education. But if you don't have an inner game that supports you doing those things, you won't do them. So even though we know what to do, it doesn't matter how many times we have taken the lesson of how to do it. It's, are we going to do it? And that's going to boil down to that inner game must be strong enough to support the actions required for the results you desire. So that's where that came from.
That's cool. I recently was reading. I read books all the time, and one of them was talking about it's a 3-word phrase, and it's there's 8 letters. It's um, have, be, and do.
Mm.
8 letters, and the way you arrange them is really impactful as to what the meaning is. And
Mm.
the the arrangement where it's do, be, have um, is what I did most of my career. It's like, okay, I've got to do something to be or do have be is what I was doing. So I had to do something to get money, have money, and then I'll be happy, right? And that's the wrong way. And
Yeah.
what you're doing with the inner game, I think, fits what I learned to be the best way, which is be, do, have.
Amen.
And that's, or be, have, it's be, do, have. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
you become what your intent is.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
your inner game is you strengthen your inner game. And then you're inspired to do the things that you need to get done to do to have the end result.
Yeah. And it's not only that you're inspired, but you have the capability of doing what you know to be done. I think a lot of times one of the other pillars I teach is that we're often living a 24-ounce life in a 12-ounce glass. What does that look like? Well, we've got 24 ounces of life to live, but we've only got a 12-ounce container. Guess what? 12 of it's going to go somewhere else.
Mm.
And that's kind of our life, is if we don't have an inner game to support what we're trying to accomplish, then we won't do it. And even if we do it, we'll do it for a short period of time, because when willpower collides with patterns, patterns win. And so we have to be really careful about the patterns we've created in our language, in our personal constitution, our belief systems, and our values.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be careful about that, because that's going to determine the outcome that we're going to get and whether we're going to be able to retain it.
Right. So those patterns are kind of like the computer program. It's right in the
Yeah,
subconscious. They're just plain. They get triggered and they do what they do. And if they're not
sure.
set up properly, you're going to end up getting off course. You get drawn off course.
Right. I
So
mean, you
you're
ask somebody, hey, do you know how to lose weight? Yeah, I know how to lose weight. What do you do? Well, I need to exercise. I need to, eat right. Okay, great. So why are you overweight? It's
right.
not because we don't know. We're not lacking information. What we lack is the implementation of information we already have.
Yeah, we're drowning in information now.
Mm-hmm.
It's taking that, and like you say, taking it and actually making something happen. Right.
Yes.
That's the key point. So
Yeah.
you also looks like you do TED Talk. You've done at least one.
Did a TED Talk in Texas. Yeah, that was a great experience, great time. Um, because
what was that like? Was there, I mean, TED Talks are amazing. It was like 15, 20-minute talk, right?
yeah,
And it's intense. You have to be so prepared for that.
yeah. I mean, I'd always admired TED Talks. I'd always admired, what people accomplish with them. And somebody asked me, hey, Bob, do you want to do a TED Talk? And I said, would love to. And they said, well, we have one coming up in Texas. Would you be willing to travel? I said, sure. And they had heard me speak on connectology and connecting with people. And so I believe that you have to connect with yourself. Then you have to connect with others. And then the best and final step comes when you connect others with others. So
Mm.
that's the sequence. So connecting really developed through the course of many years. Again, how did I develop a board of directors? Well, borrowed credibility, helped me
Mhm.
meet people, which connected with me with people. How did I connect with kids out in the parks and things like that when I was trying to deal with them? Well, that was through connecting. And I believe that the quality of your connection will always be determined by the quality of questions you ask. Are you asking the right question? And the wrong question is, how are you doing? What do you do for a living? Those are just weak questions. They're going to be weak answers. So I'm a big believer on really developing great questions. So in connectology, I teach that a lot. And somebody came up to me and says, hey, would you be willing to teach connectology in a TED Talk? And I said, sure. So that was a
Awesome.
huge honor.
Tell me a little bit about the aspect of, you said the first step is to connect with yourself.
Hmm.
That's counterintuitive to me.
Yeah, it is. Typically,
So tell me about that, if
I
you
mean,
would.
it's the most intuitive thing that should be, but
Yeah,
unfortunately, we're taught to go
once
out.
you see it, yeah.
Yeah. I think, one of the things for me was always about who am I? Who do I want to be? And then who do I need to surround myself with to be able to do it? I'll give you an example, a great story. I had a gentleman made $6 million one year in church, at my church. And I
Mhm.
remember thinking, man, that's amazing. And everyone was talking about this guy made $6 million last year. And I was maybe 25, 24 at the time. And I
Okay.
remember walking up to him and saying, can I buy you breakfast sometime? And he said, sure. So we went to breakfast and we sat down at Mimi's Cafe in Monrovia, California.
Okay.
And I walked up and we sat down and he said, look, Bob, I know why you wanted to have breakfast with me. Well, I said, why? And he says, because everyone's talking about how much money I made last year. And so you probably want to know how I made that money. And I said, no, really, there's a million ways to make money. And just because you made it one way doesn't mean I could. So it's not really that. And he says, then what else? And I said, I've got a question. And that is, who did you have to become in order to make that amount of money?
Wow. That's a
And
great
he looked at
question.
me and I remember him just looking at me and he goes, and I'm 25, he's 42 at the time, retired.
Mhm.
He was completely retired at 42. And I said, he says, I don't know, Bob. I have to give that some thought. And I said, okay. And I said, he says, that's an interesting question. I said, I believe that the quality of your questions is going to determine the development of the quality of your connection. And I
Mm.
really want to strive to make sure that I'm asking great questions. So
Mhm.
over the course of my life, I've really focused on the questions that I'm asking myself, asking others. And, but I remember asking him, who did you have to become? And him saying, I don't know. And thinking, connecting with ourselves first, we have to figure out who we are.
Right.
And in that conversation, so I went on to work for that guy for 6 months. I said, next question I had was, can I work for you one day a week for free for an unlimited, unspecified amount of time? And he goes, doing what? I said, I don't care. He goes, Bob, I'm 42. I'm retired. I don't have anything for you to do. I said, I'll be your chauffeur. I'll be your caddy at the golf course. I'll do it, anything I can possibly. He goes, why would you be willing to do that? I said, I just want to be around you to see how you live your life. And so he gave me the opportunity of a lifetime, 6 months. For quick story, first time I walked up to his driveway and I said, okay. He goes, get in the car. I said, where are we going? He goes, when somebody's mentoring you, just do what they tell you. I said, fair enough. Got in the car. We drove to downtown Los Angeles, parked downstairs. And he goes, we're going to go to the very top floor. We're going to meet with a company that I'm thinking about buying. They're going to have their head people there, their CEO, all this. And we're going to have my accountant and my attorney there. And we're just going to have a conversation to determine whether it's a good fit. And I said, oh, what do you want me to do? And he goes, just be a fly on the wall. And I said, I can do that. We
Wow.
walked upstairs, went down. He introduces me to his attorney, introduces me to his CPA, introduces me to the other people. We're all sitting in this big boardroom overlooking LA. It's gorgeous. And I remember he says to his CPA, he goes, "Hey, could you take the P&Ls and sit down here with Bob and kind of go over them with him and explain to him why this does or doesn't make sense?" And his CPA looks at me and goes, "Oh, okay." So he does that. And then he takes the attorney, goes, "Hey, could you sit down and go over the contract with Bob and go line by line and tell him what makes sense or what doesn't make sense for us to buy this company?" And so the attorney does it. For 6 months, every day that I worked for him, it was like that. We were in shareholders meetings. We were buying apartment buildings. We were buying businesses. We were going to, you name it, sitting down with attorneys, sitting down with, CPAs for 6 months. I mean, that education, I couldn't have paid for that education.
Doesn't sound like it.
Nothing I could have paid for that education. And then he gave me an opportunity to be a part of a little business that he had where we bought 5 properties and we sold those 5 properties. But I mean, again, and that all comes from just saying, can I do this for you for free, no strings attached? And I'm telling you, the more I tell, I don't care if they're 50, 60, 70-year-old, I don't care if they're 20, the best education you'll ever get is when you say, let me do something for you for free. Can I buy you lunch? Can I buy you breakfast? I'll tell you another quick story if you don't mind.
No, I love it. Yeah.
Another gentleman, I was driving down the street and and there's this guy. I'm in my Hyundai Excel, little 3-door hatchback.
Okay.
And I pull up next to this Rolls Royce at the stoplight. And I look over and he looks at me and we pull in the next stoplight and we're same place. And
Yeah.
I look over and he looks over at me. I roll down my window. He rolls down his, mine's this cranking his little button. And he says, yes. I said, can I buy you lunch sometime? And he says, why? And I said, because you've clearly done something I haven't at this point in my life. And he said, pull over. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll go up and get his business card. So I park my car and I walk up to him and he goes, get in. I'm like, okay. So I get in. We spent the next couple of hours just driving around and him telling me about coming over here from the Middle East and how he had brought over one family member at a time and how he had amassed this fortune in buying apartment buildings and buying Luke Thodum Properties in downtown LA. We were in the San Gabriel Valley. And he took me by these apartment buildings, an amazing education. And, again, in 30 minutes, guys, you can get an amazing education. We pull up at this apartment building. He goes, I bought this apartment building back in I don't remember what it was, 1972 or whatever. And he says, and I just figured that this was a really good investment because of blank, blank, blank. He told me the deals. And I said, okay. And I said, so what are we doing here? He goes, we're going to go in and check on my investment. And I said, oh, great. So we walk in, he walks into the office. The manager says, hi, Mr. Thorne, how are you? And he says, hi. And they talk for a few minutes. And he's like, how's Johnny? And how's your husband? And, how's your little girl? And all this stuff. And then we leave. And I'm thinking, well, I thought you were going to be checking on I figured you're going to be going through the books and going through the ledgers and the income and the expenses. And he goes, Bob, I got people to do that. He goes, the most important investment I have is my people. And he says, so that's why I spent my time with the people there. And I was like, wow. So we have lunch. We're sitting in this little deli. And he says, Bob, why? He says, why are you willing to get into a stranger's car? And I said, sir, because I just want to learn. And I said, but I got a better question. He says, what's that? I said, why would you let a stranger into your car? And he laughed and I'll never forget. He just smiled and laughed. And then he says, because of the same reason, because you wanted to learn. He goes, Bob, I can name on one hand the number of people that say, Bob, teach me, or Luke, teach me. He goes, versus Luke, give me. Because the fact that you want to learn, I'm at your disposal. And it was an amazing, he's since passed, an amazing human being. But it's those kind of things that, like I said, when people breathe into your life, and you just can't get enough of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful. That brings you into, for me, that all ties back to you know, everything next level. I mean, you're you set yourself up with that kind of view of the world and how life works to build relationships. And
Yeah.
you're setting the pace by giving to some degree.
Mm.
It's like, hey, I'd like to learn from you, and I'm not going to charge anything.
Right.
Help me understand what you do.
Right.
And who's not going to be excited about that? It's especially if they've got some really cool stuff they've done in their life.
Yeah. There's so many people that want to teach. There's
Yeah.
so many people that want to breathe into somebody else's life, but they're not going to go around saying, hey, can I breathe into your life? Hey, can I breathe into your life? They're not going to
Right.
beg you.
Yeah.
They're not going to, make you. Um, but if you ask,
Mm.
they want to do that. It's part of the very nature of most great leaders in our life, uh, are people that want to, and do that, but they're not going to force it upon you. And I always say that when you walk into a room, people come to our private dinner, Next Level by Association, and I'll say, there's people in this room that can change your life forever,
Hmm.
but it's not up to them to find you. It's up to you to find them. And I'm a big believer that we need to be constantly on the lookout for people that can, um, that can teach us things, not give us things.
Mm. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
Some great
absolutely.
stories.
Thank you.
So let's see. You have getting wow, time goes so quickly. You've one thing I wanted to ask you about. You created some what you call live immersions and online
Mm.
courses.
Hmm.
And I'm curious to know a little more about that immersion aspect and
Yeah.
what you do there. And it's the subject matters are mastering your inner game, connectology, art of intervention,
Mhm.
the formula, and interview mastery.
Mhm.
So yeah, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
We'll wrap it up.
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I believe that, Tony Robbins talks about this, and I'm a big believer of this as well, that there's two things that go into great learning. One is immersion, where we're totally immersed in something. It might be a 1 day, it might be a 4 hour, it might be a 6 month or 12-month program. It doesn't matter. But that immersion. And then there's this spaced repetition. The spaced repetition is the thing that keeps things ingrained in being able to implement them. So when I talk about immersion, I'm talking about maybe a 1 day course. So the art of intervention, the mastering your inner game, connectology are 1 day experiences. They're not
Mhm.
like you're sitting in a classroom learning. These are experiences where we do practical and tactical things that help integrate it into our very being. And so whether it's one of those subjects or all of the subjects, I've done 1 day and 3 day courses. And I've always walked away going, I'm better for having taught it.
Yeah,
And then
that's cool.
the feedback I get from people is, I'm better for having attended. And so, I still get letters from people that went through the course, 10 years ago. And they'll be like, Bob, I went to this course and I remember it blank, blank, blank. And
Mhm.
so I think it's one of those things. That immersion is really good. And then, I do a weekly a broadcast that I do. I do a monthly dinner that I host. I have different ways for people to integrate and to be a part of a community so
Mhm.
that they can have that spaced repetition and get it further enhanced in who they are being at the time.
Mhm. Oh, that's excellent.
It's a lot of fun.
Great. Well, thank you. Last question. Where do you see yourself? What's your vision now for the future? Where's your passion driving you or pulling you at this point?
My passion is still the same. It's on just helping human beings.
Uh-huh.
So it may develop a new course, it might develop a new book at some, but really everything's probably going to stay very similar. It's just going to get maybe a broader reach. It's maybe going to take a look a little bit different. Um, so the art of intervention is one of those things that, how do you teach yourself? How do you intervene for yourself so that you make better choices?
Mm.
We've all made choices that we regret. We've all made choices that, well, if you don't like the word regret, it's okay. I'm okay with it. But we've all had these situations in our life where, yeah, I could have done that better. Wish I had done that better.
Mm-hmm.
How do we make that? So art of intervention became one of those things. People were like, Bob, you teach intervention. You've done interventions for people, for entrepreneurs, for you name it. An intervention is just change of direction. So it's not always a drug or alcohol related.
Mm.
And so that was one of those courses that just became the next level. So how can I create that so that I can teach that so that people can integrate it in their own lives? I don't know that something else isn't going to come up, or I might do something else like that. But I know that the main course of my life is going to be how do I use who I am to benefit the lives of others around me, and then in that there's going to be these things that fill in the gaps, like first responders. That just became a gap filler. It became one of those things where I saw a need, said let's just do that, and so we did that. It may be something like that as well, but everything is going to be based on human behavior. Everything's going to be based on how can I contribute to the greater good of even more people? How do I impact even more people, even more deeply?
Excellent. Thank you. I think, wow, there's nothing else I can say. I think that tells a story. We've had some bold leadership stories today, and I'm very pleased with our conversation. So I want to thank
Thank
you
you.
very much. And
Absolutely.
we will see you all in the next version of this show. Next interview is coming up. And
Congratulations on your show.
yeah, thank you very much. And I'm going to end the recording, and we'll chat a little bit here in a bit when I'm done.